My name is Holly Bennett. People often say that family is everything. I used to believe that. But sometimes, the people who share your blood become strangers long before they admit it. If you enjoy emotional family dramas, unforgettable karma stories, and powerful life lessons, don't forget to subscribe to Quiet Karma Stories. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to life every week. 5 years before everything fell apart, my grandmother, Eleanor Bennett, was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The doctors told us she needed full-time care. She could no longer live alone. At the family meeting, everyone promised to help. My parents said they would figure something out. My younger sister, Olivia, insisted her demanding corporate job made it impossible for her to stay. She had just received another promotion in Chicago. "My career is finally taking off," she said. "I can't throw it away now." Everyone nodded in understanding. Then all eyes turned toward me. I had just been offered the opportunity of a lifetime. A management position at one of the city's fastest-growing architecture firms. It was the career I had worked toward for years. But when I looked at Grandma sitting quietly in her wheelchair, I already knew my answer. "I'll stay," I said. "I'll take care of Grandma." No one argued. In fact, they looked relieved. Just like that, the responsibility became mine. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. I drove Grandma to every doctor's appointment. I managed her medications. Cooked every meal. Helped her walk when she still could. Read her favorite books when her eyesight began to fail. On difficult nights, I slept in the chair beside her bed because she was afraid of waking up alone. Meanwhile, Olivia's life moved in the opposite direction. Every few months, social media showed another promotion. Another business trip. Another luxury vacation. Another celebration. My parents couldn't stop talking about her. "Our daughter is becoming one of the youngest executives in her company. We're so proud of Olivia." Whenever relatives visited, they admired her achievements. No one ever asked how I was doing. To them, I wasn't successful anymore. I was simply the daughter who stayed home. Even though caring for Grandma was the hardest job I'd ever had. Not once did I regret my decision. Because every evening, Grandma would smile and say, "You're giving me something money could never buy. Time. Love. Dignity." One rainy afternoon, about a month before she passed away, Grandma asked me to sit beside her. She reached for my hand. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were as clear as ever. "Holly," she whispered. "I know what you've sacrificed." I shook my head. "You never owed me anything." She smiled softly. "I know. But I owe you." I tried to change the subject. She wouldn't let me. Instead, she pointed toward the old family house. The same house where she had raised her children. The same house filled with generations of memories. "I've already made my decision," she said quietly. "I want the house to belong to the person who protected this family when everyone else walked away." Tears filled my eyes. "Grandma." She gently squeezed my hand. "This home isn't a reward. It's a promise. A promise that someone who truly loved this family will always have a place to call home." A few weeks later, Grandma Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep. The funeral brought the entire family together. For a brief moment, it felt like we were united again. But that feeling didn't last long. Because only a few days later, when her lawyer opened the will, one decision would tear our family apart. And it all began with the house Grandma had trusted me to protect. A week after Grandma's funeral, our family gathered at the office of her attorney. The room was quiet. Heavy. No one spoke much as we waited for the reading of the will. My parents sat together on one side of the table. Olivia sat beside them, dressed in another expensive business suit, checking emails on her phone as if she had somewhere more important to be. I simply sat there, still grieving the woman who had become my best friend over the past 5 years. The attorney opened the file. Mrs. Eleanor Bennett left several financial accounts to be divided equally among her children. My parents nodded. That part came as no surprise. Then the attorney continued. As for the family residence, the room fell silent. Grandma's house wasn't just another piece of property. It was one of the oldest homes in our town. Beautifully restored. Located in a historic neighborhood. Its market value had risen dramatically over the years. The attorney looked directly at me. The property is to be inherited solely by Holly Bennett. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Then everything exploded. What? My mother nearly jumped out of her chair. That has to be a mistake. My father slammed his hand on the table. Read it again. The attorney calmly adjusted his glasses. There is no mistake. He handed my father a copy of the will. Grandma's words were written in black and white. I leave my home to my granddaughter, Holly Bennett, because she gave me the greatest gift anyone can offer another human being. Her time, her love, and her unwavering care. The room became painfully quiet. Olivia's face turned pale. Then anger quickly replaced the shock. This is ridiculous, she snapped. I deserve that house just as much as she does. I looked at her in disbelief. You visited Grandma 3 times in 5 years. Olivia crossed her arms. I was building my career. I wanted to answer. But I knew Grandma had already spoken for herself. As we left the lawyer's office, my parents asked me to meet them at home that evening. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew something was wrong. Neither of them offered condolences. Neither congratulated me. Instead, my father got straight to the point. Holly, you need to sell the house to your sister. I frowned. What? My mother leaned forward. It's only fair. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The house is worth nearly $2 million. My father nodded. We know. Olivia will buy it. I waited for him to mention the market price. He didn't. She'll pay you $250,000. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood. $250,000. My mother smiled as though she were offering me a generous deal. That's more than enough. I stared at both of them. You want me to sell Grandma's house for less than 1/8 of its value? It's family, my father replied firmly. Family helps family. I couldn't help noticing the irony. Where had that philosophy been while I spent 5 years caring for Grandma alone? Where had family helps family been when I gave up my career? I took a slow breath. No. The room instantly grew cold. My father's expression hardened. You need to think carefully. I already have. The answer is no. My mother shook her head in disappointment. You've become selfish. Selfish. The word hit me harder than I expected. After everything I had sacrificed. After everything Grandma and I had shared. I was being called selfish. My father stood up. His voice was calm. But his words were colder than anything he had ever said to me. Then listen carefully. If you refuse to sell that house to your sister, that you're no longer our daughter. The room fell silent. I searched their faces, hoping this was just anger talking. But neither of them looked away. They meant every word. I felt tears gathering in my eyes. Not because I was afraid of losing the house, but because I realized I had already lost my family. Without saying another word, I picked up my coat and walked toward the door. As I reached the driveway, I heard Olivia call after me. "You'll regret this, Holly." I looked back one last time. "No," I said quietly. "The only person I refuse to betray is Grandma." I drove away with a broken heart. But deep down, I knew something my family didn't. Grandma hadn't given me that house because it was valuable. She gave it to me because she trusted me to protect it. And I intended to keep that promise, no matter the cost. 3 days after my parents threatened to disown me, another message appeared on my phone. Family dinner. Sunday. 6 p.m. No explanation. No apology. Just a date and a time. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But a small part of me still hoped they wanted to fix things. Maybe they had realized how unfair they had been. Maybe they wanted to talk. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I arrived at my parents' house, nearly the entire family was already there. My uncles. My aunts. My cousins. Even a few close family friends. It didn't feel like dinner. It felt like an intervention. The moment I walked into the dining room, every conversation stopped. Everyone looked at me. Then they looked away. Olivia was already seated beside our parents. She looked perfectly comfortable. Confident. Almost amused. As if she already knew how the evening would end. Dinner began with awkward small talk. People discussed work. Vacations. Politics. The weather. No one mentioned Grandma. No one mentioned the house. But I knew it was coming. Halfway through dinner, my father slowly stood up and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. He looked around the table before fixing his eyes on me. "I have something I'd like to say." A knot formed in my stomach. My father folded his hands behind his back. For generations, this family has always chosen each other over possessions. Several relatives nodded. He continued. "Unfortunately." He paused for dramatic effect. "Not everyone here shares those values." I felt dozens of eyes turn toward me. Then my father spoke the sentence I will never forget. "She's choosing a dead woman's house over her own family." The room became painfully quiet. No one defended me. No one questioned him. Instead, several relatives slowly shook their heads. One aunt whispered, "Such a shame." Another quietly said, "I never expected this from Holly." They didn't know the truth. They only knew the version my parents wanted them to hear. Across the table, Olivia took a sip of her wine. Then a small smile appeared on her face. Not a kind smile. A victorious one. She looked exactly like someone who believed she had already won. Finally, she spoke. "Holly, I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. You know I could take much better care of that house." I stared at her in disbelief. "You've barely stepped inside it in years." She shrugged. "That's not the point. It belongs with the family." The irony almost made me laugh. I wanted to ask her where the family had been while I spent countless sleepless nights caring for Grandma. Where had they been when I canceled job interviews? When I missed birthdays? When I held Grandma's hand through chemotherapy? But I already knew the answer. They hadn't been there. My mother finally joined the conversation. "Holly, just sell the house. You'll still have money. And this family can finally move forward." Move forward. As though Grandma's final wish was simply an obstacle standing in Olivia's way. I looked around the table one last time. Every face seemed to be waiting for me to surrender. To apologize. To give in. No one cared why Grandma had trusted me with the house. No one cared about the promise I had made. They only cared about getting what they wanted. At that moment, something inside me changed. For years, I had fought to earn my family's approval. Suddenly, I realized I didn't need it anymore. Without saying a single word, I stood up. I picked up my coat, my purse, and quietly walked toward the front door. "Holly!" my father shouted behind me. I didn't stop. My mother called my name. I kept walking. Olivia laughed softly. "She'll come around." I opened the front door and stepped into the cool evening air. Behind me, I heard the sound of conversation starting again. As if I had never been there. As if I no longer mattered. They thought I was walking away defeated. They thought the pressure would eventually break me. What none of them knew was that the very next morning, I was about to make a single phone call. A phone call that would change every one of our lives forever. I didn't cry after leaving my parents' house. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. More than they could ever imagine. But somewhere between the family dinner and the drive home, something inside me changed. I stopped trying to convince people to love me. I stopped trying to earn respect from those who had already decided I didn't deserve it. Instead, I decided to protect the only person who had truly believed in me. Grandma. The following morning, I unlocked the front door of her house. The old wooden floors creaked beneath my feet. Everything looked exactly as she had left it. Her favorite rocking chair still faced the living room window. Her reading glasses rested beside the last novel she never finished. For a moment, the silence felt overwhelming. Then I remembered something she once told me. "If you ever need answers, look inside my desk." I walked into her study. The antique oak desk stood in the corner, covered with neatly organized papers. Most of the drawers contained old photographs, family letters, receipts, birthday cards. Nothing unusual. Until I reached the bottom drawer. Hidden beneath a stack of faded documents was a small leather folder. Across the front, Grandma had written 3 words in elegant handwriting. "For Holly only." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents I had never seen before. Historic preservation records. Property surveys. Letters from the local historical society. An official certificate identifying the house as one of the oldest preserved homes in the county. I stared at the papers in disbelief. According to the documents, the property wasn't just valuable because of the land. It had significant historical importance. Several organizations had attempted to purchase or preserve it over the years. But Grandma had always refused. She wanted the house to stay in the family. Tucked inside the folder was one final letter. It was addressed to me. "My dearest Holly. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here to protect this home. This house carries more than memories. It carries history. Please don't let anyone pressure you into giving it away before you know its true value. When the time is right, you'll know exactly who to call." At the bottom of the page, there was a business card. No explanation. No notes. Just one name. Richard Anderson. Beneath it was a private phone number. I had never heard the name before. But Grandma clearly trusted him. And after everything she had done for me, I trusted her. I picked up my phone. My heart was pounding. I dialed the number printed on the card. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. Then someone answered. "Good morning." A calm professional voice filled the line. "Mr. Anderson's office." I took a slow breath. Then quietly said, "I'd like to speak with Mr. Anderson, please." There was a brief pause. "May I ask who's calling?" I looked around Grandma's study one last time. My name is Holly Bennett. I'm calling about Eleanor Bennett's house. The woman on the other end suddenly became very serious. Please hold for just a moment. Soft music began playing. Seconds felt like minutes. Then, a new voice came onto the line. Deep. Confident. Miss Bennett. This is Richard Anderson. I've been expecting your call. A chill ran down my spine. How could he possibly have been expecting me? Before I could ask another question, he said something that changed everything. Your grandmother asked me to help you when the time came. At that moment, I realized Grandma had planned much more than anyone in my family could have imagined. And without knowing it, I had just taken the first step toward changing all of our lives forever. 2 days after my phone call, I found myself standing outside the headquarters of Anderson Development Group. The glass building stretched high into the skyline. It was one of the most respected real estate companies in the country. I suddenly understood why Grandma had kept Richard Anderson's business cards so carefully. This wasn't an ordinary businessman. He was one of the most influential real estate CEOs in America. A receptionist escorted me to the top floor. A few moments later, the office doors opened. A tall man in his 60s walked toward me with a warm smile. Holly Bennett? I nodded. He extended his hand. I'm Richard Anderson. Your grandmother spoke about you many times. His words caught me by surprise. You knew Grandma personally? He smiled. For nearly 20 years. She was one of the wisest women I've ever met. He invited me into his office. Family photographs decorated one wall. Architectural models filled another. It was clear this man didn't simply build buildings. He preserved history. After a few minutes of conversation, he leaned forward. So, are you ready to sell the Bennett house? I smiled politely. No. He raised an eyebrow. No. I didn't come here to sell it. I came because my grandmother believed you could help me protect it. For a few seconds, he simply stared at me. Then, he smiled. A genuine smile. Eleanor was right about you. Most people who inherited a property like yours wanted the biggest check possible. You asked the right question. I don't want money. I want to preserve her legacy. Mr. Anderson slowly nodded. Then let's go see the house. The following afternoon, he arrived with a team of architects, historians, and restoration specialists. For nearly 3 hours, they carefully inspected every room. The original woodwork. The handcrafted staircase. The stained glass windows. The stone fireplace. Even the century-old gardens. Nobody rushed. Nobody talked about demolition. Nobody discussed replacing the house with luxury apartments. Instead, they admired it. As the tour ended, one of the historians looked at Mr. Anderson. This place is extraordinary. It deserves protection. Mr. Anderson turned toward me. Holly, do you know what you own? I shook my head. I thought it was simply my grandmother's home. He smiled. It's much more than that. This is one of the finest preserved historic homes in the entire county. It cannot be replaced. He paused before continuing. I'd like to offer you a partnership. Not a purchase. A partnership. We'll fully restore the property. We'll preserve every historical detail. We'll cover the restoration costs. And together, we'll open it for educational tours, community events, and historical programs. You'll remain the owner. The Bennett house stays in your family. For a moment, I couldn't speak. It was exactly what Grandma would have wanted. Not sold. Protected. Her legacy would live on for generations. I accept. Mr. Anderson smiled and shook my hand. Then congratulations. You've just become the guardian of one of this state's greatest historic homes. As the paperwork was prepared, Mr. Anderson casually asked, "By the way, you mentioned having a younger sister. What's her name?" "Olivia Bennett." The smile on his face suddenly disappeared. He looked at me for a long moment. Then quietly said, "Olivia Bennett. She works for my company." I blinked. "What?" He nodded. "She's one of our senior corporate managers." For a second, I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Olivia had spent years bragging about her powerful CEO. Without ever realizing, she was talking about the very man standing in front of me. Mr. Anderson looked thoughtful. Then he asked a question that made my heart race. "Does Olivia know you're here today?" I slowly shook my head. "No." He gave a quiet smile. "I thought not." What neither of us realized was that the truth was about to reach Olivia. And when it did, her perfect corporate world would begin to crumble. A week after my meeting with Richard Anderson, life seemed unusually quiet. The restoration team had already begun documenting every corner of Grandma's house. Architects visited almost daily. Historians carefully photographed original features. For the first time since Grandma's passing, I felt hopeful. Meanwhile, somewhere across the city, Olivia believed she was about to receive the biggest promotion of her career. She had been telling everyone about it. Our parents couldn't stop bragging. "Our Olivia is about to become vice president. She's finally joining the executive team." Even relatives who hadn't spoken to me in months filled social media with congratulatory posts. Olivia was convinced nothing could stop her. She had no idea her CEO had already met me, or that he knew exactly who I was. A few days later, Richard Anderson called me. "Holly, I wanted to let you know something." "What is it?" "I've learned a few things that concern me." His tone was calm but serious. He explained that after our meeting, he quietly asked Human Resources to review several conversations Olivia had recently had inside the company. Not because she was my sister, but because certain comments had raised ethical concerns. According to multiple employees, Olivia had openly told co-workers that she would soon take ownership of her grandmother's historic house. She even claimed the property would eventually become hers because her parents would pressure Holly into doing the right thing. Some colleagues thought it was harmless family gossip. Others felt uncomfortable, especially when Olivia admitted she planned to buy the house for far below its actual value. One manager had documented the conversation. Another employee confirmed it. The more the company looked into it, the worse it became. Richard sighed. "Our company has a strict ethics policy. We expect our leaders to act with honesty and integrity, both inside and outside the workplace. Trying to use family pressure to gain personal financial advantage raises serious concerns about judgment." I remained silent. I hadn't asked him to investigate Olivia. I hadn't even mentioned the ultimatum my parents gave me. The facts had reached him on their own. A few days later, Olivia walked confidently into the executive conference room, expecting to celebrate her promotion. Instead, she found Richard Anderson waiting with the Human Resources Director. The meeting lasted less than 30 minutes. When it ended, her promotion had been cancelled, effective immediately. She was informed that an internal ethics investigation had been opened. Not because of poor performance, not because of missed targets, but because senior leadership questioned whether someone willing to manipulate a vulnerable family member for personal financial gain could be trusted with greater responsibility. For the first time in years, Olivia had no answer. She left the meeting in complete shock. That evening, my parents began calling me repeatedly. I didn't answer. I had no idea what had happened. Until the next morning. Richard called again. I thought you should hear it from me. Olivia's promotion has been suspended. The investigation is now official. I closed my eyes. Part of me felt sad. Not because she lost the promotion, but because none of this had been necessary. If she had simply respected Grandma's final wishes, none of it would have happened. Richard spoke one final sentence before ending the call. Holly, you didn't cause this. People are responsible for the consequences of their own choices. As I hung up the phone, I looked out the window at Grandma's house. The restoration crew was carefully repairing the old front porch. Piece by piece. They were preserving something precious. At that very moment, my phone suddenly began vibrating. Once. Twice. Again. The calls kept coming. Olivia. Then my mother. Then my father. I ignored every one of them. I had a feeling this was only the beginning. And before the week was over, my phone would show something I never expected. 17 missed calls. And one desperate voicemail. Friday morning began like any other. The restoration crew arrived just after 8. The smell of fresh lumber drifted through Grandma's old house. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I spent the morning helping the preservation team sort through old family photographs and handwritten letters. Every room seemed to reveal another piece of Grandma's story. For a few hours, I forgot about my parents. I forgot about Olivia. I forgot about the family dinner. My phone had been on silent all morning. Just after lunch, I picked it up. The screen lit up. I froze. 17 missed calls. 11 from Olivia. 4 from my mother. 2 from my father. My stomach tightened. Something had happened. Before I could think, another notification appeared. One new voicemail. I hesitated. Then pressed play. For a moment, all I heard was heavy breathing. Then Olivia's voice filled the room. It was nothing like the confident executive I had always known. She sounded frightened. Desperate. Almost on the verge of tears. Holly. What did you tell my CEO? Please. Please call me back. The message ended. I stood there in complete silence. I listened to it again. Then a third time. The same question echoed in my mind. What did you tell my CEO? The truth was nothing. I hadn't asked Richard Anderson to punish Olivia. I hadn't demanded an investigation. I hadn't tried to ruin her career. In fact, I had gone out of my way to avoid discussing her. Everything Mr. Anderson discovered had come from Olivia's own words. Her own actions. Her own decisions. The truth had reached him without my help. I quietly locked my phone and slipped it back into my pocket. A few minutes later, it rang again. Olivia. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother called. I didn't answer. My father called immediately afterward. I ignored that one too. An hour later, another voicemail arrived. This time it was my mother. Holly. Please call us. We need to understand what's happening. Her voice sounded nothing like the woman who had threatened to disown me. The confidence was gone. The anger had disappeared. Only panic remained. That evening, Richard Anderson called. I figured you'd be getting a lot of phone calls. I laughed quietly. 17 missed calls. He chuckled. I'm not surprised. After a brief silence, I finally asked the question that had been on my mind. Did you tell Olivia that I reported her? No. His answer came instantly. I made that very clear. He continued. I told her exactly what I'm telling you now. No one destroyed her opportunity. She destroyed it herself. He paused before adding. Leadership isn't measured by job titles. It's measured by character. And character is revealed when people think no one is watching. After we ended the call, I sat alone on Grandma's front porch. The sun slowly disappeared behind the trees. I thought about everything that had happened. My parents believed I had taken revenge. Olivia believed I had ruined her promotion. Neither of them understood the truth. The truth doesn't need someone to speak for it. Eventually, it speaks for itself. Just as I was about to go inside, another car pulled into the driveway. Then another. And another. I recognized them immediately. My parents. Olivia. Even my uncle. For the first time in years. They weren't coming to demand something. They were coming to ask for it. And what they wanted from me would change our family forever. The next morning, I was watering Grandma's rose garden when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Then another. I looked up. My parents stepped out first. Olivia followed a few seconds later. She looked nothing like the confident executive who had smiled across the dinner table just weeks before. Her shoulders were slumped. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. For the first time in years, she looked afraid. I slowly set the watering can aside. None of them spoke immediately. The silence felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Finally, my mother took a hesitant step forward. Holly. Her voice trembled. We're sorry. I stared at her. Those were 2 words I had waited years to hear. But somehow, they didn't feel the way I imagined they would. My father lowered his head. I shouldn't have threatened to disown you. You didn't deserve that. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever received from him. Then Olivia quietly spoke. I'm sorry too. I was selfish. I thought I deserved everything. I never stopped to think about everything you sacrificed for Grandma. For a brief moment, I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe this visit was about healing our family. About finally telling the truth. About making peace. Then my mother reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. She held it tightly in both hands. My heart sank. There it was. The real reason they had come. She looked at me with pleading eyes. We're not here to ask for the house anymore. You can keep it. We understand now. I waited. Because I knew there was more. There is. Just one thing. My father took a deep breath. Olivia's investigation is getting worse. If Mr. Anderson closes the case against her, she could lose everything. Olivia stepped closer. Tears rolled down her face. Holly. Please. If you would just speak to Mr. Anderson. Maybe he'd listen to you. You don't even have to lie. Just tell him I'm not a bad person. The words hung in the air. I looked from one face to another. My mother. My father. My sister. Suddenly, everything became clear. They hadn't come because they finally understood my pain. They hadn't come because they regretted the years of favoritism. They hadn't come because they wanted to rebuild our relationship. They had come because they needed something. Again. Only this time. It wasn't my house. It was my influence. I took a slow breath. Then I asked the question none of them expected. If Olivia had received her promotion. If Mr. Anderson had never learned the truth. Would any of you be standing here today? No one answered. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even Olivia. The silence told me everything. I nodded slowly. I thought so. Tears filled my mother's eyes. Holly. We're your family. I looked at the three people standing in front of me. Then I looked back at Grandma's house. The house she had trusted me to protect. Finally, I spoke. I've already forgiven all of you. Their faces filled with hope. But forgiveness. I paused. Doesn't erase consequences. Olivia lowered her head. She understood exactly what I meant. I wasn't going to punish her. But I also wasn't going to ask someone else to ignore the choices she had made. Richard Anderson hadn't judged Olivia because she was my sister. He judged her because she had violated the values every leader was expected to uphold. That wasn't my decision. It was hers. My parents realized there was nothing left to say. One by one, they turned toward their car. Before getting in, my father looked back at me. For the first time in my life, I saw regret in his eyes. Real regret. As they drove away, I stood quietly on Grandma's porch. The morning breeze gently rustled the old oak trees she had planted decades earlier. I smiled softly. Grandma had once told me, "Character is revealed when life gives you the power to hurt someone." At that moment, I finally understood what she meant. And I knew the hardest decision of my life was still waiting for me. The following Monday, I received a call from Richard Anderson. "Holly," he said, "the investigation is almost complete. There is one final question." I knew what he meant before he said another word. "Several people have asked whether you'd like to make a statement regarding Olivia." I closed my eyes for a moment. This was my opportunity. If I wanted revenge, I could have it. One conversation. A few sentences. That was all it would take. But revenge had never been my goal. I thought about Grandma. About the countless evenings we spent together on the front porch. She had once told me, "Bitterness is a prison you build for yourself." I smiled softly. "Richard, I don't have a statement." There was a brief silence. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I won't recommend Olivia. But I won't condemn her either." Richard's voice grew warm. "I had a feeling you'd say that." Before ending the call, he said something I would never forget. "Integrity isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed when you have the power to hurt someone. And choose not to." After hanging up, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. A week later, the company's decision became official. Olivia's promotion was permanently cancelled. She was allowed to keep her position, but she would no longer be considered for executive leadership until she rebuilt the company's trust. The decision wasn't based on my opinion. It was based on the company's ethics policy. The consequences belonged to her, not to me. A few days later, my parents asked if they could visit one last time. This time, I invited them inside. We sat together in Grandma's living room. No one argued. No one raised their voice. The house felt strangely quiet. Finally, my father looked around the room. "I understand now." He spoke so softly I almost didn't hear him. "Your grandmother didn't leave you this house because she loved Olivia less. She left it to the person who loved her more." No one disagreed. My mother wiped away a tear. "We spent years believing success was measured by titles, promotions, and money." She looked at me. "We forgot that kindness is worth more than all of those things." Olivia finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry, Holly. I spent years competing with you, when I should have been grateful for everything you did." I looked at my sister. For the first time, there was no arrogance in her eyes. Only regret. I smiled gently. "I didn't ruin your career." I paused before finishing the sentence. Your own choices did. No one argued. Because everyone knew it was true. That afternoon, we walked through Grandma's garden together. The restoration work was nearly complete. The historic house looked more beautiful than ever. Children from the local school would soon visit to learn about its history. Community events would be held there. Grandma's legacy would continue for generations. Exactly as she had hoped. As my family prepared to leave, my mother stopped at the front gate. She looked back at the house. Then at me. With tears in her eyes, she quietly said, "We thought we were losing a house." She shook her head. "We never realized. We were losing our daughter." No one spoke after that. They slowly drove away. I stood on the front porch, watching until their car disappeared down the road. The evening sun painted the old house in golden light. I could almost hear Grandma's gentle laugh carried by the breeze. I realized something then. She hadn't left me an inheritance. She had left me a responsibility. Not just to protect a house, but to protect the values she had spent her entire life teaching me. Love without conditions. Kindness without expectation. Strength without cruelty. And the courage to do what is right, even when it costs you everything. Some people inherit money. Some inherit property. I inherited something far more valuable. Character. And no one could ever take that away.